Tonight, the infection rate falls, but evidence that cases are spreading across more suburbs. Social distancing is working, but still more deaths being recorded. The number of cases worldwide passes 1 million. The Prime Minister says we have 6 months of this ahead, urging vigilance and patience. Cabin fever, travellers snap in hotel room quarantine, taken away for treatment. Cases connected to the cruises in Sydney Harbour edge toward 500. More ships follow the government's order to leave. What's in the box? A man charged with trying to deal drugs past police into a building under guard in lockdown. Deploying drones, the sky-high efforts to keep our city sanitised. An overhaul of tap and go, limits doubled, stopping the spread of cash and disease. And down from shortage to discounting, the oversupply of meat.
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Michael Usher.
Good evening. Sydney's latest infection numbers show we have every right to be optimistic that we're doing the right thing. Despite 2 more deaths, the rate of positive cases is going down. We're slowing the COVID spread in our city. But worldwide, the picture is not good. More than 1 million confirmed cases. Here, though, there's a troubling new problem. People in those quarantine hotels pushed to despair.
The Travel Lodge at Wynyard, an officer from Disaster Welfare in the foyer speaking with hotel staff. Above, returned travellers in rooms upstairs giving accommodation ratings not with stars but with their hands. Plainclothed and uniformed police are gathered as well after reports one of the travellers had trashed a room. On the other side of the CBD at the Intercontinental, it's understood 2 have been taken for mental health checks after struggling to cope.
And I can show you the view out the window.
A window that doesn't open. Peter McCullough is one of 300 holed up at the Swiss Hotel in the city after returning from a cruise.
You can't keep people locked up in their rooms.
In the same hotel, Peter has tested negative for coronavirus but has developed viral pneumonia instead.
It's a lung infection, and the air conditioning system is the only thing that supplies any breathable air into this room, so I believe that's where I got it.
Heat maps show the virus spreading by postcode across Sydney all week. Bondi is worst with more than 50 cases, then Mossman and Wentworthville. But then large parts of the southwest like Burwood, Fairfield, Milperra, none. The real headache? Cases with no known source. Areas where the virus is lurking, being spread by people who don't know they have it. That's the data that will determine when the lockdown ends. The Premier today contradicting the Police Commissioner's call yesterday of 3 months.
I echo what the Prime Minister said. We're in it for at least 6 months.
That as the state passed another grim milestone. 2 more deaths yesterday, the first time we've seen 2 in one day. A 75-year-old passenger of the Ovation of the Seas has died. Also, a 74-year-old female patient at Albury Base Hospital.
It was a patient who passed away in the intensive care unit. We obviously extend our condolences to the family.
The state's death toll now stands at 12, with total cases 2,389. The low overnight jump of 91, the only brighter news.
And that's pleasing to see a sustained reduction.
But for small business today, a much-needed boost. $10,000 grants to those who don't pay payroll tax. 750,000 businesses.
This $10,000 will help small businesses with their fixed costs, utilities and rent.
All on a day the state should have been celebrating the start of the Easter show. Normally, of course, this site on the opening day of the Easter show would be alive with the sights and sounds of 75,000 people. Today, emptiness and silence as part of the coronavirus shutdown. At Show HQ, boxes of ribbons and prizes that will never be handed out, with a warning that without more funds, the show may never be the same.
Our security moving forward is totally unknown at this point in time. We've had some good conversations with state government.
Let's go to Chris Reason now, who's at the Travel Lodge in the city. Chris, hello to you. This problem with the returned travellers would seem to be only getting worse with more returning every day.
Yeah, good evening to you, Michael. Well, another 400 people arrived through Sydney International Airport today. The total number of those in hotel quarantine across our city to 3,700 now. A deep concern with that couple inside the Intercontinental, of course, a 5-star hotel, and that not being deemed good enough for them. We're outside, as you say, the Travel Lodge right now, where inside you can still see a presence of police, security and military officials in the foyer there. The Police Commissioner in New South Wales Health insisting that they are doing all that they can to make the stays for these people as comfortable as possible. But clearly, some are not coping. Michael.
All right, Chris Reason in the city, thank you for that. And the Police Commissioner says most Corona cruise ships will have left New South Wales waters by Sunday as he prepares a special investigation into the Ruby Princess debacle. 7 passengers from the ship have now died, more than a quarter of the national death toll.
Through the heads, but just for a brief pit stop, the Spectrum of the Seas, one of the 8 cruise liners recently left in limbo off the Sydney coast by the coronavirus.
2 ships are currently underway and out of New South Wales water.
By Sunday, the 5 stranded Royal Caribbean liners, after refuelling and restocking, will also be gone. No passengers or crew infected on the Spectrum, but 12 have been tied to the Celebrity Solstice, 34 to the Voyager of the Seas, 84 to Ovation of the Seas, and 342 infections linked to the Ruby Princess. Its fate is uncertain after crew members were tested on board yesterday by medical teams.
Anyone who needs to come off because of health reasons, they'll come off.
As the row over allowing its passengers to disembark intensifies.
Make no mistake, lives have been lost as a result of this debacle.
I've avoided the blame game because that's not what the community wants to hear.
But now it's the subject of a police investigation, reviewing documents and 000 calls.
Possible criminal or civil negligence at this point is a step too far.
Exactly why, how and who allowed passengers to disembark from the Ruby Princess here just over 2 weeks ago. There are calls today to put that to a full inquiry with the powers of a Royal Commission.
This is not simply a criminal inquiry, although it could lead there.
Let's go live now to Chris Marr. Chris, good evening to you. Preparations, they would seem to be well underway for the latest cruise ship departure.
Michael, the Spectrum of the Seas has been guided to a mooring here off Taronga Zoo near Bradley's Head. Now, it's here that it's expected to be refuelled by tanker and restocked with supplies. The Police Commissioner says by the end of Sunday, he expects all 5 of the Royal Caribbean liners to be on their way to their home ports. The Ruby Princess, though, remains off the coast. It's about in line with Port Botany right now as it awaits the results of those medical tests on crew members yesterday. Michael?
Chris Marr on the harbour, thank you. Australia's Chief Medical Officer says global coronavirus numbers vastly underestimate the size of the pandemic. Professor Brendan Murphy believes there could be up to 10 million cases, as the Prime Minister urges all Australians to be patient through the Easter break.
In the long fight against coronavirus, one triumph.
The changes that you are making, Australia, are working.
By slowing the rise in cases to single-digit rates.
Right now, that trajectory is promising. It's encouraging.
But across the globe, a more deadly picture. Today, case numbers crossed 1 million. Our chief medico does not believe it.
The true number is probably 5 or 10 times as much as that. Numbers even out of the US are probably much higher than are being reported.
Do you believe the numbers that are coming out of China at the moment?
The only numbers I have total faith in are the Australian numbers.
Because he claims we have the world's highest testing rate and social distancing is working, but it's testing people's patience.
Patience must become the virtue of Australians.
For the next 6 months at least, the PM says. In other words, forget the Easter holiday.
People should not be getting in their cars and going to other places.
But he says state leaders will look at ways to ease the rules over time. After the next National Cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the government plans to release modelling on how the virus might spread. This as the Prime Minister acknowledges his government's main plans for stopping the virus and protecting the economy have now been made public.
I think we've put the big rocks in the jar.
Still in the works, a code of conduct for businesses paying rent after they've had to lock their doors.
We need to do everything we can to reduce that pressure.
Pressure on residential renters and landlords too. No agreement today, but a stern word from the Prime Minister. Talk to one another. Tim Lester, 7 News.
Police Commissioner Mick Fuller has defended his crackdown on coronavirus lockdown offenders, saying those who've been fined had some pretty poor excuses. The poorest of the lot, would you believe this, was a man who allegedly delivered drugs to a mate in hotel quarantine as part of a care package.
Walking into Sheraton on the Park, Philip Chang appears to be like any other person delivering a care package to a friend stuck in isolation. But inside, officers allegedly found forbidden fruit.
If you intend on bringing prohibited drugs into these hotels and providing it to a police officer, there will be consequences.
The 37-year-old was arrested, accused of trying to smuggle in MDMA for his bored mate. At his Lane Cove home today, he was nowhere to be found.
Nothing to say.
Dozens of infringements have been issued by New South Wales Police for breaches of the Public Health Act. A woman was fined $1,000 for driving around without a valid reason, and a man in Newcastle for eating a kebab on a street bench. At Richmond today, filming got underway for a remake of the Hollywood movie Children of the Corn. The horror here, no social distancing. So this weekend, what can you do? Go to the shops? Yes, that's meant to be for food and essentials, but
no one's got a ticket for going to the shops.
Exercise or play in the park, families can. Others are limited to 2 people. Get a coffee, only if it's takeaway. Sit at a table with friends and drink that coffee. No. Go to the doctor? Yes. Go to work or school? Yes. Visit your partner? Yes. Aimless drives aren't allowed, but fishing is. It all comes down to whether or not it's essential. If you don't need to do it, don't.
I'm personally overseeing each of the infringements, and if it's unreasonable, I'm putting a line through them.
Common sense, that's what police want everyone to use going forward. They say they can't legislate for every scenario and admit there are some contradictions in the laws. Like retail shops continuing to trade when customers technically shouldn't be out for non-essentials.
What shops are essential and what shops aren't at the moment?
If they're open, you can go into them. That's my rule.
Do you really need to go to IKEA to buy a bedspread? I mean, really?
Andrew Denny, 7 News.
Let's go to some breaking news now. There's been a riot between inmates at Parklea Prison. Laura Banks is outside the facility. Laura, good evening. When did this all start?
Good evening, Michael. Well, the prison is tonight in lockdown after that riot, which started around 3 this afternoon. Now, sources have told 7 News that up to a few dozen inmates were involved. They've set fire to cells, they've damaged prison property, they've cut an internal fence, and a fire brigade was called. It's understood that inmates have been returned to their cells. There have been no injuries to any correctional officers, but that some inmates have required medical attention. Now, tensions have been running high here at Parklea since it was announced that there would be no more visits from family and friends as a result of the coronavirus, and it appears that perhaps tensions boiled over today, although management denies this is COVID-related. Now, Parklea is a maximum security facility. It's a privately run facility and it houses some of the state's worst offenders, Michael.
All right, Laura Banks there with that breaking news. Thank you. The Prime Minister will ease restrictions at places of worship over Easter, allowing extra people inside to help broadcast, stream or help deliver those religious services.
It means that the same rules that would apply to a workplace for those who are participating in presenting the service, conducting the service, will apply as they do in other places of work.
The participants must still, though, abide by the social distancing protocols. And in a 7 News First, we'll bring you live coverage of next week's Good Friday and Easter Sunday services from St Mary's Cathedral. Well, throughout this crisis, global health authorities have been telling us you only need to use a face mask if you have symptoms or are caring for someone who's sick. Well, today there's been a significant shift, with authorities in the US telling everyone now to cover their face.
To mask or not to mask, it seems across Australia that is the question. There are 2 schools of thought. In Chatswood today, people didn't give it a second thought, almost everyone covering up.
It's important now to stay safe for everyone.
But in Manly, while they might have had plenty of social distancing, there was barely a mask in sight.
You're going to
get a scarf or something to cover your face?
If it's got to be done, it's got to be done.
But now the World Health Organisation is reviewing the advice it's had up till now. Consistently, we've been told not to bother.
I'm saying to people in Australia, don't wear masks, go about your normal business.
But today in the States, even President Trump is changing his tune.
And it doesn't have to be a mask, it can be a scarf. Scarf is highly recommended.
This will be the look. So let me lead as mayor and let people know this is how we're going to be seeing each other.
As it becomes clearer that you can carry coronavirus but show no symptoms and still be infectious, the advice for everyone to cover up is becoming firmer.
Even if a face mask is only about 20% effective at preventing infection, it can actually have a substantial impact on reducing the pandemic.
With no end in sight to the shortage of surgical masks, it seems the advice will continue to be to leave them for frontline staff who need them most. So it seems we could soon be being urged to cover up with clothing or other fabric.
Our masks should be for our frontline health workers and for those essential service workers where they need to be in that face-to-face contact.
Evan Batten, 7 News.
More than 100 stranded Australians are tonight on dry land. Their virus-stricken cruise ships finally allowed to dock in Florida. After a month at sea, relief passengers are heading for flights home, leaving behind a country with a frightening new record.
Any port to escape the virus storm. A South American cruise finally ends in Florida.
Hell, we're down the bottom of the world. Yeah. And how do we get out of this?
Carol and Peter among 133 Australians on board Zaandam and Rotterdam. 2 virus deaths and hundreds with symptoms saw other countries turn them away.
I thought I'm going to die on this ship. It's just been very difficult and wondering whether I'm going to see my family and my grandkids again.
In Australia, they were growing desperate too.
Yeah, not having any fresh air for, I think it's been once for half an hour in the entire 2 weeks.
The US insists foreign passengers leave straight away.
Definitely be on a flight heading to Australia sometime tomorrow.
But the crew, including 3 Australians, can't leave. Ashley Perry now stuck on the Zaandam, her mother pleading, "Please don't leave my daughter behind." As the US grapples with a spiralling death toll, the Pentagon has been asked for 100,000 body bags. With the health system now under so much pressure, the tough choices have begun. New York paramedics are now being told when responding to a heart attack victim, if they can't revive the patient, they should no longer bring them to hospital. The economic struggle just beginning. A record-shattering 6.6 million Americans lost their jobs last week, double the week before, 10 million in a fortnight. Compared to the last 50 years, off the chart. A government cash handout is still 2 weeks away. In New York, Paul Carrack, 7 News.
And infection rates and hospitalisations are slowing in some of the hardest hit European countries. But sadly, the death toll has not caught up. Almost 37,000 lives have been lost across the continent, many dying without family by their side.
On the outskirts of Madrid, the most vulnerable coronavirus patients and those who've succumbed to it are taken from a nursing home. The centre carried out 150 tests this week, 99 were positive. Even coffins have to be disinfected, with Spain's death toll at 10,348. The country sits only behind Italy in the number of lives lost. France's toll is rising, as is Germany's, Belgium's, the Netherlands, and in Switzerland, which has one of the highest number of cases per capita. The military is medevacing patients from Paris, where public hospitals are overwhelmed.
Bonjour, madame.
This private clinic has dedicated almost all of its beds to patients needing life support.
Dans cette réanimation, le plus jeune a 35 ans, le plus vieux 77.
Almost 3,000 lives have been lost in the UK. Here in East London, they're building a third temporary morgue the size of 2 football fields. Bodies will be kept here until a cremation or burial can take place. Relatives aren't allowed at the site. In most cases, loved ones aren't even allowed at the hospital, like the family of a teenager who died in London.
He was a young boy, age 13, without his mother, without any sibling on his deathbed in the last moments. And that's very hard to sort of digest.
But amid the pain, moments like this. After 5 days in a Spanish hospital, a 93-year-old man is cheered on his way home. In London, Sarah Greenhalgh, 7 News.
Time to check the forecast now with Angie Asmus. Angie, good evening. Well, sunny morning, but the rain clouds are back.
They are, Michael. Good evening. That grey change is sweeping right across our state tonight, but because most of the day was sunny, we still recorded above average temperatures. The city reached 25.8 degrees just before 3 p.m. Penrith's top was exactly the same about half an hour earlier. Now, you'll see several zones in yellow here, signifying that change that reached our state today. The main rain band has been in the northern half of the state, 20 to 30 millimetres around Dubbo and Mudgee, followed by more widespread falls further south this afternoon. It started to impact the metro region a short time ago, with more rain still to come tonight, but that rain band will move offshore tomorrow morning, signalling a return to more settled conditions. Your detailed weekend outlook soon, Michael.
Thank you, Angie. Well, there are plenty of companies still looking for workers with thousands of positions vacant. Next, we'll show you who's hiring and a good success story to put a spring in your step. Plus, the online shopping boom, Australia Post swamped. So, what are we ordering? A report into the deadly Wallen train derailment reveals shock new details. Later, just how contagious is COVID-19? We investigate why social distancing is so vital. And in sport, the push on for the NRL to resume mid-year, while a basketball legend has some stern advice for the game's administrators. That passenger train that derailed outside Melbourne last month, killing 2 people, was travelling more than 6 times the speed limit when it crashed. A preliminary report found the train had the emergency brake applied shortly before the accident, but still hit the fatal section of track 85 kilometres above the speed limit. 39 people were injured when the Sydney to Melbourne XPT came off the tracks at Wallen. Chris Dawson's pleaded not guilty to murdering his wife Lynette, who vanished from their Northern Beaches home almost 40 years ago. The former teacher, who didn't attend today's Supreme Court hearing, has always denied killing his wife. The 71-year-old is due to stand trial later this year. With tens of thousands of Australians suddenly out of work because of the coronavirus outbreak, many are looking for new ways to earn a living. For some, it's required learning completely new skills for a job they've never done before.
After 2 decades working in the air, James and Judy Short say they're grateful to have landed on their feet.
Very lucky, very blessed.
The Qantas cabin crew staff both temporarily stood down as the aviation industry struggles through the coronavirus outbreak.
Certainly, when that news came in, it was very emotional. To lose that, we weren't sure what we were going to do.
But embracing the unexpected career change, they swapped the skies for supermarkets, both securing new roles at Woolworths.
You realise that you've got a lot of transferable skills.
Woolworths has filled most of their 20,000 vacancies, but there are still plenty of opportunities available, particularly in healthcare and medicine, information technology, trades and services, manufacturing and transport, and mining and resources. According to job website Seek, there is more than 3,000 cleaners and call centre positions available, 1,400 jobs in warehouse and distribution, with truck drivers and factory production jobs also up for grabs.
Whiz is one company looking to add 1,000 extra workers to their cleaning network, even offering additional training to upskill those coming on board.
We do like them to have some experience, but I think with this new course that we're bringing on and through the support with Whiz, I'm sure that we can, get them up and running.
Amber Laidler, 7 News.
The corona lockdown has triggered a boom and bust for Australia Post, with a surge in deliveries and the use of buy now, pay later credit. But postal executives have been forced to take a pay cut as traditional mail services drop away.
Usually empty at this time of day, Australia Post sorting hubs are handling record numbers of parcels.
It's past Christmas volumes, between 25 and 30,000 a day at the moment.
Online items in demand include pharmaceuticals up 285%. Department store orders have jumped 184%. So too athletic gear by 28%, while women's fashion has fallen 6%. The big increase, orders for wine are up nearly 200%.
Last night we saw 20,000 cases of wine alone, which is about 100% week-on-week growth.
How we're paying for all this stuff has also transformed. In 2017, just 4% of Australia Post parcels were purchased with Afterpay. That rose to 11% in 2018, then jumped to 30% last year. With the closure of the major department stores and giant retail chains, there's been a scramble to keep up with online ordering and delivery. And many experts in the industry believe this is how we'll be shopping in the future, just another way the pandemic is changing our lives. Australia Post's traditional business has plunged. Passports down 50%, General Mail 30%, International Post has dropped, all forcing AusPost executives to take a 20% pay cut. And big deliveries are pushing the envelope.
We're seeing a lot of bar fridges and big exercise equipment, so big bulky items.
Posties are also adapting, with often no signature required to leave parcels. The one guarantee, the mail will get through. Brian Seymour, 7 News.
Drones are being repurposed to help in the fight against COVID-19. Next, the sky-high solution to keeping our city clean. Major changes to Tap and Go, limits doubled, stopping the spread of cash and disease. 2 rugby league players cleared of sex assault charges, an emotional reaction outside court. And helping hand how our police officers are going the extra mile for young people doing it tough. That's next. Three decades after the murder of Sydney bookie Charles Scarrett, his killer has been sentenced. Terry Hickson pleaded not guilty, but last year a jury decided otherwise, and today a judge ordered him behind bars for at least 22 years. Charles Scarrett was stabbed, bound and robbed of about $25,000 in his Woolwich garage in 1989. Hickson's blood was found on the victim's sock and inside the boot of his car. Now, 61 years old, Hickson won't be eligible for parole until 2032. Fire investigators are asking for the public's help as they look into a suspicious blaze that gutted a botany factory in January. The kitchen manufacturing warehouse suffered $14 million worth of damage. 4 neighbouring industrial buildings were also damaged. Anyone with information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers over that. Rugby league players Zane Musgrove and Liam Coleman have been cleared on appeal of groping a woman at a Coogee pub in 2018. Coleman, the son of Rabbitohs legend Craig Coleman, described the last 16 months as hell for him and his family.
The worst 16 months of my life. My parents are in a struggle, my family. Terrible.
A district court judge today ruled the alleged offence could not be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Tap and Go limits are about to be doubled from $100 to $200 to reduce the amount of physical contact at the checkout. It's helped limit the spread of the virus, but there are concerns for some members of the community who rely on cash.
Soon you'll be able to pay up to $200 with PayWave before being asked to provide your PIN number.
Oh yeah, it's a lot better.
Great idea. Anything that can help, I suppose, limit the contact with everyone.
It's a move made by the Australian Payments Network to help shoppers reduce the need to touch EFTPOS machines and lower the risk of transmission.
I don't generally, but in today's economic crisis, we have to go that way.
We're being encouraged to shop less and be out of the house less, and obviously by shopping less, then we're tending to buy more.
The increased limit will be rolled out in the major supermarkets first, before smaller stores, and it also applies to digital wallets like Apple Pay. More and more retailers are only accepting tap and go payments, leading to concerns for those in the community, like the elderly, who only use cash.
A lot of them don't actually use cards, so this is going to really hit older Australians.
Cash is king, so they get a bit confused by that.
It's a 3-month trial that some believe could kill off cash.
Customers are being pushed to pay with card, and it may be the death of using notes and coins at the payment checkout.
Emma Dallymore, 7 News.
They've already been deployed in their thousands across the virus epicentre in China. Now experts here are looking into using drones to stop the spread of COVID-19. The goal? Rapid decontamination of public spaces without health workers ever having to go outside.
Sweeping over a beachside park, the next stage of sanitisation. Able to spray an area the size of a football field in just 13 minutes.
The drones can spray up to 2 litres a minute. We can put these down any public areas to get into the hard-to-reach areas.
The repurposed irrigation drones also carry speakers to warn the public.
This is an announcement from a drone.
The designers have entered negotiations with state governments to start work on public areas like parks, train stations and schools, with a sanitiser made from ozone, proven to kill coronavirus.
Once it's done the job of killing viruses, it breaks down to water and oxygen.
and it's completely safe for humans. You could take a shower in ozonated water and have no adverse effects.
And operated remotely would keep sanitation workers off the streets. It's not just about safety but speed as well. Somewhere like here at Martin Place would take a worker between 6 and 7 hours to spray by hand. One of these drones could do it in just 90 minutes. It's why China employed more than 12,000 drones across Wuhan. Discussions have already begun in New South Wales with interest from multiple parties. Cameron Price, 7 News.
The doom and gloom of the coronavirus pandemic has dominated global headlines for months, that much we know. But among all the bad news, there have been many small moments of kindness, a difficult time in human history, helping to bring out the best in many of us.
Generosity blossoming with a special delivery for 80-year-old Jenny McDermott.
Oh, can't believe it. How lovely.
Flowers ordered today by a perfect stranger.
Somebody who, just wants to spread some cheer. What a lovely idea.
Inspiring many, Amelia popping into Poppies and Amber in Manly to grab a bunch for her elderly neighbour too.
I think it's pretty common for people to want to help each other out. It just feels like a natural thing to do.
The Kirribilli Ex-Services Club has turned into a delivery service offering packages of essentials for the vulnerable.
It's a lifesaver. It's done with kindness and generosity.
Our staff are part of the community that we're trying to look after.
Even the police are showing off their softer side.
It's not always a positive light that police get seen in, so it's kind of nice to, change things a little bit. And
bringing goodies for kids at home and part of PCYC.
It was kind and generous of them.
More and more random acts like this proving kindness is more contagious than any virus. In Chipping Norton, sunshine is being dropped on doorsteps. The answer to a crisis, a little spray of love. Serena Andaloro, 7 News.
Good deeds and good to see. Well, panic buying, emptying shelves, now some good news for your next trip to the shops. Up next, which supermarket is chopping meat prices? Plus, the symptoms might be similar, but we'll explain why COVID-19 is nothing like the flu. Lone Rider, the final section of the light rail, opens with little fanfare.
And it'll be a soggy Friday night across Sydney with maybe even a storm in the mix as well. Details soon.
Let's have a look at the markets. The ASX 200 is back in the red, closing down 87 points. The major banks dragged the share market lower, Commonwealth Bank leading the losses, while some mining stocks edged higher. Our dollar, there it is, buying 60.63 US cents. Fuel prices have fallen again, reaching an average of $1.15.7 a litre. You can find regular unleaded for as cheap as 84 cents in Randwick and 86 cents in South Granville. The final section of Sydney's new light rail opened today with very little fanfare and very few passengers either. Services on the line between Anzac Parade and Kingsford began at 5 a.m, 4 months after trams started running into the city. The opening came a year later than planned at almost twice the cost. Police are warning people to be vigilant with their online safety during self-isolation after 2 men were charged for their roles in a $2.6 million cyber scam that attacked Australian businesses.
We are expecting to see increased traffic, and I think it would be naive to assume that some of that will not be nefarious.
The 3 others who were charged last year as part of the investigation remain before the courts. Shoppers are being warned of more queues at supermarkets next week, but this time outside the stores. Coles and Woolies will enforce social distancing from Monday, limiting the number of shoppers on the floor. Meanwhile, in a win for customers, Coles has slashed the price of mince, but Woolworths is refusing to budge.
It's easy to cook with, a dinner table staple, and now there's plenty to go around. Panic buying emptied mince shelves. Now Coles has bolstered its supply and cut the price by 20%.
We've actually gone and purchased double the amount of beef we normally do from our suppliers, so our suppliers are definitely benefiting from this.
3-star mince is now $4.80. 4-star mince, $6, $1.50 cheaper.
Until Tuesday the 7th of April, we've slashed the prices.
Limits on the amount of meat and milk you can buy have now been lifted at both Coles and Woolworths. But restrictions still remain on rice, pasta, canned and frozen vegetables, frozen chips, flour, sugar, eggs, hand sanitizer, some soaps, toilet paper, tissues and nappies. Despite Coles dropping mince prices, Woolworths won't be lowering theirs to match, instead offering deals on salmon and lamb cutlets in the lead up to Easter. If you are heading to the shops, doctors say your best defence against COVID-19 is social distancing, washing your hands and not touching your face.
If people are wearing gloves, you can still contaminate those gloves, and when you're taking it off, again, if you're not washing your hands properly, you can easily contaminate yourself.
Supermarket safety, now more important than ever. Tristan Boreas, 7 News.
Well, coronavirus is often compared to the flu. Still to come, why scientists say the diseases are very different. We show you how just one person could spread COVID-19 to thousands of others. Don't miss that soon here on 7 News. But first, Jim's here with sport. Jim, good evening to you.
G'day, Michael.
All set for a huge day of racing, but those turnstiles, they're going to remain locked.
They will, Michael. Coming up, no fans allowed, but the show goes on at Royal Randwick tomorrow. We've got a wonderful story on a trainer from the country hoping to strike it rich in the big spoke. Also ahead, the Roosters and Blues captain on his time away from the game and the push by the NRL to resume mid-year. And a basketball legend fires another shot at footy bosses over financial mismanagement. That's next. Welcome back, everyone. Confidence is growing in the NRL that they can restart the season by July 1 at the latest. While league bosses are working on plans, the Stars are staying ready for action, like Boyd Cordner, who hasn't played a game yet this year.
Another day in isolation, another backyard sesh. Got a good little setup here. Got the bench, a few dumbbells.
Thanks to the Daily Telegraph for that material. Now, the new 8-man Innovation Committee is discussing locations like Sydney Olympic Park and the AIS in Canberra for running the competition in an isolated bubble. It's the eve of one of Australian horse racing's biggest weeks, with 8 Group 1 races over the next 2 Saturdays at Royal Randwick. And a trainer from Albury is hoping it's third time lucky in the country championship final.
Albury trainer Donna Scott has returned to the big smoke with her chance Bennelong Dancer.
Between Royal Randwick and Flemington, they're the 2 biggest courses in Australia, and to be able to bring her up here for the 3rd time is, it's unbelievable and it's a great experience.
It's the only all-women's team lining up in the Country Championships final. Racing is the only big-ticket sports event that's continuing.
We've got the mare and girl rider and the girl trainer, so hopefully the girls can pull it off with a bit of luck.
Brenton Avdulla is back in the saddle tomorrow. He too is adjusting to racing's strict guidelines.
I've had to select an area where I ride at, which is a metro area now, which I can only do 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays.
He'll ride in her time in the TJ Smith, a Newlong Prince and the Doncaster. And all this as he tries to sell his home.
Sorry to see it go?
Yeah, I would be sorry to see it go. It's done its job for me.
Former NRL player, now real estate agent Bo Champion is making that happen.
We just had to adapt and we're supplying gloves, masks, hand sanitisers.
This room is usually jam-packed, but for the first time in its 152-year history, the Inglis Easter yearling sales are going online.
It's not really an option just to not hold the Easter yearling sale. The trainers really need them into their system so that they're ready to start running from later this year. 360
yearlings will be on display. Buyers will still hear the auctioneer and view videos of the horses.
We are breaking completely new ground.
Michelle Bishop, 7 News.
Pat Cummins isn't giving up on this year's Indian Premier League. The Aussie pace bowling superstar was bought by the Kolkata Knight Riders for a record $3.17 million. But like all world sport, it's now in limbo.
Really looking, I guess, for some hope anywhere around the world to show signs that, things are easing and, a tournament can be played.
For now, the Super Rich 2020 tournament has been delayed until April 15 by Indian cricket officials. Well, while sport's in shutdown, we're not stopping, and neither are the Aussie stars generously inviting us into their homes to entertain us and fight on together. Tonight, it's Andrew Bogut, the basketball legend whose own retirement plans have been thrown out, and he has some words of advice for our footy codes.
The players are home while we're learning new ways. Athletes are teaching us all focus on the good things in these tough times.
Just trying to spend more time with the family. I think just learning more about the kids, spending the whole day with them.
The basketball courts, the F1 tracks.
Here we are, sunny Australia,
the harsh outback.
Footy fields and the rest have been replaced by social media as the stage for our stars to do their thing.
I don't use Instagram. I get on Twitter every now and then, obviously, as we know.
And we know he never pulls a punch. Bogut's arrival shook Sydney's sporting landscape. A colossal figure in basketball and business is amazed at the state of our footy codes.
To be in trouble after a month or two of stoppages is pretty mind-boggling. Some of our bigger codes just had so much cash that they were spending and burning, and I think it might be a bit of a wake-up call.
The NBL's been through it and learned. After a rookie cameo, American whiz kid LaMelo Ball says he's buying the Illawarra Hawks. The Kings' rebirth led to a season of record-breaking crowds, and Bogut might be back for more.
The fact of the matter was I was going to get to this Olympics in 20 and then have a long, hard chat and figure out what I was going to do from there playing-wise. But that's all gone out the window.
The enforced rest may help him make it to 2021.
I don't know what to do, what to think right now.
And we all know how that feels. Matt Carmichael, 7 News.
Tell you what, Mush, I love that shot of Daniel Ricciardo being David Attenborough. My fingers are crossed for Andrew Bogut to get to Tokyo 2021. He's fantastic for the sport.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing another side to all the sporting stars, aren't we? Stars on camera as well during all their social media appearances. And Jim, big day tomorrow at the races.
It is a huge day, day one of the championships. Now, Bruce McAvaney and half of our commentary team will actually be doing the commentary from their living rooms. This is the world we're living in right now, taking no precautions. But yeah, looking forward to a big day at Royal Randwick. And we'll have more on Randwick and the championships in Weekend Sunrise tomorrow morning.
All right, Jim, see you then.
Okay.
And for the news tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, until recently, you may have heard the coronavirus being described as just another flu. Well, we know that definitely is not the case. But why? Seven's Melissa Doyle explains.
Measles, one of the most highly contagious diseases in history. In fact, before a vaccine was developed in 1963, a single person infected with the virus would, on average, infect up to 18 others. Compare that to another deadly disease, SARS. It caused a global pandemic in 2003, partly because anyone who got it would pass it to up to 5 more people. These figures are what scientists call a disease's basic reproduction number, or its R0. They allow us to describe how contagious a disease is and compare it to others. So what about COVID-19? Well, current estimates puts its R0 between 2 and 2.5, and the seasonal flu just 1.3. That doesn't seem that high, especially compared to measles. In fact, COVID-19 and the flu seem rather similar when looked at in isolation, but they are not. Let's start with the flu. With an R0 of 1.3, each person will infect either 1 or 2 people. After 10 rounds, 56 people are infected. Now let's look at COVID-19. Using a conservative R0 of 2, we'll run through that simulation again. This time the spread is far more rapid. And after that same 10 rounds, the number of people sick now totals more than 2,000. It's tempting to think of COVID-19 as just another flu. But the next time the thought crosses your mind, think back to those R0 numbers and how many people you could save through social distancing.
Mel Doyle there. And coming up, Angie Asimus has the forecast. Angie, the rain, is it going to stick around for the weekend?
Well, Michael, it should be limited to just this evening and early tomorrow morning. The rest of the weekend's looking beautiful. Details next.
We're a company and an industry that does the right thing.
A breeding ground for the largest cluster of COVID-19 cases in the entire country.
Did anyone explain that perhaps the virus was on board?
No.
This email is the smoking gun.
The Ruby Princess Outbreak Unleashed, Sunday at 7 on 7.
Tonight's 7 News headlines. There have been 2 more COVID-19 deaths in New South Wales, but overall, the infection rate is falling. Most Corona cruise ships will leave New South Wales waters by Sunday. A man's been charged for trying to smuggle drugs to a mate in a hotel quarantine. And supermarkets are set to limit the number of customers allowed into stores at once. Now, Angie's back with Sydney's weather. And Angie, how's the weekend looking?
Michael, while it's going to be a soggy Friday night, the bulk of the unsettled weather should all clear tomorrow morning, allowing for a beautiful weekend. Before those clouds built up, well, there was plenty of sunshine and that allowed for a warm April day, reaching 25.8 degrees. Temperatures hovered around the 26-degree mark for most suburbs. In fact, it was just 18 degrees at Katoomba, though, so a fair bit cooler, and that was all before those showers arrived this afternoon. Warning areas in yellow here show where we are seeing the heaviest rainfall and strong winds tonight. Most of the activity started in the state's north, but that wet weather is now pushing across to the metro region as well. We have a trough generating the rain and storms over the state's northwest, while a cold front is also triggering wet weather in our south. Between those two systems, a solid deck of cloud is just parked over New South Wales. That front is also responsible for the first cold blast of the season. Showers, hail and highland snow in the southern states, but conditions should return to normal fairly quickly as that system tracks away. Around the nation for your Saturday, you can see the effects of that cold blast in the south. Wet and cool for Canberra, Melbourne, Hobart and Adelaide. Lovely day ahead for Perth, fine and 27 degrees. Statewide, most of the unsettled weather heads offshore tomorrow morning, so expect just some lingering showers and storms early. Cool inland, a top of just 17 degrees forecast for Wagga Wagga, while Newcastle by comparison should reach a top of 28. For the metro region, we'll be left with a touch of cloud and an early shower. Once the sun comes out during the afternoon, it'll really warm up, tops in the mid to high 20s. Strong winds on our waters tomorrow. Warnings are in place for nor'easterlies at 30 knots. For the CBD, a low of 19 degrees tonight with rain and showers. Fine tomorrow afternoon and 27 degrees. To the week ahead, most days are looking fine. A couple of cooler days on Tuesday and Wednesday with some light showers just around the CBD. That's latest weather, Michael.
Thank you, Angie. And that is 7 News for this Friday. The latest is next, and Angie Asimus will have our next bulletin at 9:30. I'm Michael Usher. From all the team here, thanks for your company. Have a great night.